Good evening, CFC family, and welcome to Hub Night Online. So glad that you joined us, especially tonight because we have two very special guests. As you can see, to my right, I have Miss Deborah Marks. Deb, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thanks.
Good.
And to my left, Grace Walsh, my beautiful, lovely wife. How are you?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. Long time no see.
It's been a while.
It's been a little while.
Yes.
We are going to be studying tonight 1 Samuel. If you caught any of Mother's Day, our Mother's Day service last Sunday, you caught these two incredible women along with two other incredible women, Paula and Delilah, and they were discussing the life of Hannah and how she was an excellent example of a mom and how we see the attributes of God through moms, through special moms like that. And so we're going to continue on that track and elaborate a little bit more than they had the time to do on Sunday, and I think it's going to be incredible. What do you think?
I believe so.
I believe so too.
So family, if you want to go right to 1 Samuel chapter 1, I'll give you a little bit of context first. We'll read a few verses and then we'll discuss it. So if you were watching on Sunday, you learned that in 1 Samuel 1, there's a woman named Hannah. She has a husband named Elkanah who has another wife named Peninnah. Now, Hannah's issue is that she is barren. She cannot have children, and her rival, which is her husband's other wife, has many children, and she provokes her, and she distresses her. And so Hannah is left to deal with that. And as Paula had mentioned last Sunday in Mother's Day, being barren in that time, in that culture, was like a curse. You were considered not blessed by God. You were really a lower status. And so she has a lot going against her. So if we look right in verse 6 and 7, just so that we can get going and have a little bit of context, it says that, verse 6, and her rival, Peninnah, used to provoke her grievously to irritate her because the Lord had closed her womb. So it went on year by year. As often as she went up to the house of the Lord, she used to provoke her. Therefore Hannah wept and would not eat. And so, ladies, just to give a visual of what's happening here, you have Hannah who is going up to the house of the Lord to go and pray and offer sacrifice that God would bless her and open her womb. And just that very act causes her rival to provoke her. So Hannah is dealing with a lot. Even in verse, I think it's 8, a little bit later on, it says that her husband is a little bit tone deaf because as his husband sees his wife weeping, he says, "Oh, aren't I greater to you than even 10 sons?" So he really doesn't get it. So you have her husband who's a little tone deaf, you have her rival, and then you have even Eli the priest who thinks that she's drunk because she's praying without speaking. All that really caving in on her would cause disappointment for anyone. And that's kind of the first question, the first point I want to get to, is how, in somebody in her shoes, how do you deal with disappointment? Because disappointment can be debilitating to us. And really, disappointment is, it's not the main problem. It's how we deal with it that's the main problem or causes most of the consequence. So Grace, I'll start with you. What can you say about that, about dealing with disappointment and how Hannah dealt with it?
How Hannah dealt with disappointment, I think like any woman would, we would be sad, hurt, frustrated. Someone's picking on me, you look at that other person is picking on her. But then I read verse 16 at the end, it says, praying out of great anguish and sorrow. She had a lot of anguish. She had a lot of sorrow in her. She was sure upset and wondering why. Everything in God's timing. It makes me think of when we miscarried.
Yeah.
And I remember Wednesday driving to church and my hairdresser called and asking why I missed the appointment.
Yeah.
And I totally spaced it out and I hung up with her and I just started bawling, started crying. And you're like, why? What's going on? And I'm like, I just felt like I was losing my mind. I was just so sad, so disappointed, so upset. I think of the verse 7 at the end says, Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat.
Right.
Yeah.
I was reduced to tears. I could understand that, And it's hard because I was so excited. I was so ready for it. I was going to be the best mom on earth,
Right.
And it happened. But God has his timing, his plans. And
Right.
I finally understood, like, it was his timing, not my timing. But it's his timing when he's ready.
Absolutely.
And also, too, I think as you're reminding me of that story, like I think as much as we don't try to be, husbands can be a little tone deaf only because we don't quite understand. I was sad, and I could definitely, empathize with your sorrow, but I didn't have that child within me. And so it's hard, and even we sometimes don't know how to react. And so as much as I was picking on Elkanah before, I think I can kind of relate to him as a man, that we really don't quite understand the sorrow of what that feels like.
That's true.
Deb, how about you?
Yeah, we read in 1 Samuel 1, verse 10, it says that in bitterness of soul, Hannah wept much and prayed to the Lord. So we knew that she began to cry out to the Lord, and she grew bold in her prayer. Hannah knew that God could only meet her needs, and she didn't let her disappointment define her.
Right.
So many times when we're disappointed in life, we try to take matters into our own hands. We try to fix our own problems and try to just do things on our own. Instead of going right to God. Mario tries to always keep me, in check, and says, don't try to fix things on your own. God's got this, and I try to stay in that, path and try to remember God's, I try to always go to God now, and I try to let him fight my battles, because, like Hannah shows us here, we should go to God and let him do it for us, because we can't do things on our own strength.
Yeah.
And Hannah's a perfect example of this here.
Absolutely. I think, you think about disappointment, and it can be, as we kind of said in the beginning, as we deal with disappointment, it can be defining for our lives,
Absolutely.
How we deal with it. And it does reveal a lot. And I don't, say this to, condemn anybody, but it really reveals where you put your trust, Not to say you won't struggle, not to say you won't be in anguish, you won't weep, you won't cry. That's life. We're human beings, and we have those emotions, and God has, for some reason, allowed us to feel the depths of sorrow, but even there's hope. And even there, it kind of shows us where we put our trust and who we rely on for getting through those things and strength. And that's kind of the next point I wanted to get to, if we can move on to chapter 2, is because after Hannah does receive a son, she becomes pregnant. After that last time she went up to the temple to pray, she does receive a son. And in chapter 2, she prays this incredible prayer. Now, some people might say, like, oh, well, she just got what she wanted, so that's why she's celebrating. But it's not that kind of prayer, because in her prayer, we can really see that she knows who God is. She knew who he was before the struggle, even if she was in anguish, and maybe it was, her emotions were very blurry at the time, but she still knew who God was. She dealt with disappointment in a way that would be an example to all of us. She brought it to God. And then when God finally blesses her, as I'm sure deep in her heart she knew that he would, she has this incredible prayer where she's just expressing all of the incredible attributes of God.
Right.
Deb, is there anything in chapter 2, as far as any of the verses of her prayer, that stuck out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Verse 1 stuck out to me. And Hannah prayed and said, "My heart exults in the Lord, and my horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth derides my enemies, because I rejoice in your salvation." Hannah had prayed before, but that was a silent prayer between her and God, and we see that in chapter 1, verse 13.
Yeah.
It said Hannah was speaking in her heart, only her lips moved,
Right.
and her voice was not heard. That's where, if you remember, Eli took it as that she was drunk in that verse. But here she's speaking and exalting the Lord. In this verse, I broke it down in a couple of things where it says, "My horn is exalted in the Lord." This here tells us that Hannah had been at a low point when God had shut her womb.
Right.
And her adversary, Peninnah, had continually been taunting her. And when she was full of grief and could not eat her food and prayed in the bitterness of her soul, but now she could lift up her horn in her head, and now she was praising God.
Yeah.
In the second part of this verse, it says, "My mouth is enlarged over my enemies." This is a pretty powerful point here. She's talking here about Peninnah and those that provoked her, about her barrenness.
Right.
She wasn't able to make any reply before, But now her mouth was opened, and now
Right.
she's freely praising God.
Yeah.
Now she has, her son, and she's praising God with this, this prayer here. And lastly, because I rejoice in thy salvation, she's rejoicing because she was delivered from her barrenness. Now she's bore her son, and she's given God all the praise. And in a spiritual sense, she has the knowledge and faith in the Lord and her God, and she knew that he would never, forsake her.
Absolutely.
And he's never failed her.
Yeah. And as you were even speaking, I kind of thought like, wow, God honors every prayer, and we should never look down upon ourselves, because you both mentioned the prayer that she couldn't even open her mouth,
Right.
but yet she was praying it. And sometimes I think, sometimes we really come down on ourselves, we condemn ourselves. Oh, I can't even open my mouth. I can't even pray
Right.
because what's
So
going on
true.
is so hard and so difficult. But God honored it,
So
and just
true.
as much as he honors this
Yep.
one, where she's more on the mountaintop and she's seen the deliverance of God.
Right.
And so
So
for
true.
anybody out there, don't feel condemned. We are living in difficult times right now.
Absolutely.
If you're at the point where you can barely pray, and when you pray, nothing even comes out, God hears that. He knows your heart. Just keep trusting in him. Keep bringing him your disappointment, especially if you're experiencing disappointment of what's happening now in the world, like we all are. Keep going to God. He honors it. And God willing, we're going to have a prayer like Hannah. Just keep trusting. Grace, how about you? What verse stuck out to you in chapter 2 of her prayer?
Verse 9 stuck out to me. He will protect his faithful ones, but the wicked will disappear in darkness.
Yeah.
No one will succeed by strength alone. And I think she realized, she couldn't do it alone. She had to go to the Lord. Not that she had to, she wanted to go to the Lord and do a prayer. We don't know what kind of a prayer, but we know that she was in anguish. It's like what you just said, Sometimes we can't even speak. It's that silent prayer, or we just cry out, and we're seeking him. And we know he gives us the strength when we can't. And he's the one who's holding us up when we can't do it anymore.
So true.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I really enjoyed that verse.
I like verse 8. It's actually the second part. For the pillars of the earth are the Lord's, and on them he has set the world. And I just love those verses in Scripture, because it just reminds us that really he is sovereign. He's in control.
Yes, he is.
Not only did he create the world, but he set it on the pillars that he also created. So the world itself, think about the calamity that our world's in right now. And, people might think it's spinning out of control, but it's not. It's on the pillars that he established. It's still stable.
Yes.
It's still stable. That's awesome. Thank you
is awesome.
for those verses. So if we can proceed now to chapter 3, and we'll kind of bring this into a landing here a little bit. Hannah has Samuel, as we know, and she weans him, so he stays with her. Now, as the ladies had spoken about on Sunday, she had dedicated Samuel to the Lord. That was her prayer, that she would give him to the Lord's service for life, which is, that's pretty heavy. That's a pretty heavy prayer. And so she weans Samuel for a time, and then at the time that the weaning is done, she does bring him to the temple, and he goes into the care of Eli the priest. And so we're not going to read a ton of the verses, but I will point out a few, because I see a connection between all that happened in chapter 1 and all that's happening now. And even that's going to go beyond this, because there's a legacy that Hannah's establishing here just with how she dealt with disappointment. So one night, Samuel is sleeping and Eli's sleeping. It's nighttime, and the Lord calls to Samuel, but Samuel does not perceive that it is the Lord. He thinks it's Eli the priest. And so in verse 4, it says, the Lord called Samuel, and he said, here I am, and ran to Eli and said, here I am, for you called me. But he said, I did not call, lie down. So he went and lay down. So this happens 2 more times, and finally on the 3rd time, Eli finally kind of gets it himself and says, I'm not calling you, the Lord is calling you, even at this young age. So as I was reading this, I think of something that me and Grace had done as we were raising our children from a very, very young age. And anytime we called to them, you'll remember, we, kids are kids and people are people. And, sometimes people respond like, what? What is it? Hey, in this day and age, it's sometimes not even words, right? It's just like grunts, grunts,
So
especially
true.
with teenagers. But we always taught our kids, when you respond yes, Mom, yes, Dad. Yes. And it wasn't just a sign of like respect, that they'd be respectful, although that was part of it. It was more that we knew that they were attentive to our voice. And so I kind of see a connection here with Hannah's faithfulness, Hannah's obedience, Hannah's ear being inclined to God, and Samuel's, because he hears his name being called. And again, we don't really know much about the time that they were together and that he weaned her. It was a short amount of time, but I can imagine that the same way that she was faithful, obedient, and poised, as you guys had talked about last Sunday, I kind of have a feeling that that example went through to Samuel, because he hears his voice even in the middle of the night, and he comes right away attentive. Here I am. Here I am. I don't know if either of you can speak about that at all, or what you see as the example of Hannah really passing on to Samuel here.
Yeah, I know that she didn't have him for long, but, she was, the time that she did have him, I think she did leave a legacy in his life,
Yeah.
The way that she was such a prayerful woman, I think that just poured into him. We see the way that Samuel was. He lived a life for God. He didn't take after, even though he was with Eli's sons. The Bible tells us that Eli's sons, they were wicked sons,
Yeah.
He didn't let them, influence his life.
Right.
He still lived for God. So I think that has a lot to do with the way Hannah, loved on Samuel, even the short time that she had him.
Right.
Mothers have that influence on their children. I think it's so important to us as parents, the way we teach our kids, even at a young age, to know God.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us in, Proverbs 22:6, that we should train up our child. You have that verse
I
too.
have that verse.
Yeah, in the ways that, they won't, in the way that they should go, and they won't depart from it.
That's right.
So it's very important. From a young age, we should teach our children. We should discipline our kids. We should take time with our children. That's not just TV time. That's one-on-one time. I remember so clearly when our kids were younger, we used to have family nights. It's important to just always, implement time with our kids. It's just important. Just especially in the days that we live in now, it's just important to just influence our kids' lives now more than ever. Back in Hannah's time, and it goes to today.
Exactly. I actually think I want to go back to 1 Samuel at the last three verses, 26, 27, 28, when she goes to Eli and she's like, remember me? And she's dropping off Samuel. And I think of that, she's had him for a short time.
Yeah.
I think of, we're great moms. We want to hold on to our children, but she gave him to the Lord, and she was like, no, I'm giving him back.
Yeah.
She knew she raised him up that point, and that she knew that God had a calling in his life.
Yeah.
Right.
She might have not known exactly what the calling was, but she knew that she was going to give him to the Lord, and the Lord was going to direct his paths.
Right.
And if we look at his life, he was an amazing prophet, and
Right.
I don't want to go ahead of myself.
That's
but
okay.
You'll do it.
Preach.
But I just think of how that poise again she had, that she went, remembered me, maybe she gained a little weight from baby weight. I think of that, how come so many years later, she changed, but she dedicated him to the Lord. Right. And that's what we do with our children.
Yep.
We dedicate our children to the Lord. And also Samuel, it took him 3 times to hear, to understand it was the God's voice. Yeah. Even though he didn't understand, Eli understood. Right. I think of my kids. I always say, I don't want to call you more than 3 times. And it took Samuel 3 times. And Eli helped him to understand. Yeah. That's our job, is to help our children to understand.
That's right.
Don't make me call you more than 3 times.
That's right. That's right. Good point.
And I thought that was interesting. I don't think I put 2 and 2 together, me telling my kids no more than 3 times. But I think God uses us as parents, as moms. We have to teach our our children, like you said, Proverbs 22:6.
Yeah.
I got all excited. I'm like, oh, we're in the same path.
Great minds
You
think
know,
alike.
exactly. And Samuel also was honest. We could get this out of it. He told Eli what the
truth.
Lord
Yeah, he
said,
told him, yeah.
and he said the truth, and he did not hold back from him.
That's right.
And I think that's such a great character, honesty. You know, we try to raise our kids always speak the truth,
Yeah.
even though it hurts. Speak the
Yeah.
truth.
True.
So that's a great character also that he has.
Absolutely. Yeah. What Grace is referring to is that the reason the Lord was calling Samuel is because he gave him his first prophecy. And how ironic, the prophecy was against the house of Eli. Eli was the priest at that time, but his sons were wicked, and Eli did not correct his sons. And so because of their wickedness and because Eli was just complacent about it, the Lord's prophecy was that he was taking the priesthood away from the house of Eli forever. And here you have this boy, maybe 12 or so at this time, just a kid, and he has to now go, like you said, Grace, and be honest and obedient and say what the Lord had told him to say. And so I think it's a great way to kind of wrap this up and kind of bring it into a close, is that legacy, right? Hannah's legacy. She was poised, she was obedient, she trusted in the Lord, she was inclined to the voice of God. And then look, Samuel is the same way.
right.
He does the same thing
true.
that his mom did. And so it's a big difference between doing as I say versus doing as I do. I mean, we can tell our kids all day long, oh, go to church, pray, be inclined to the Lord, deal with disappointment the right way, don't panic, calm down, all these things. It's a lot different than when we show them with our example, our quiet example, because really, unfortunately, they're not going to get our words. They're going to get our actions.
So true.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think great.
I think it was a great time. What do you think?
It was great.
Either of you had anything else to add? You guys have been amazing. This would not be the same without you. I so appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for having us. This
Don't
has
get
been
used
fun.
to it.
Yes.
I don't know. Well, family, we're so grateful that you joined us. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you're blowing up the comments. I hope hearts and emojis and things are flying all up the screen right now as you see these two incredible women. I would like to give them both a chance just to address the church family as we do. I hope that's okay, just to say hello and just express whatever you'd like to express. So Deb, I'll start with you. Go right over there.
Okay, hello CFC family. I can't tell you how much I miss you all, and I can't wait until we all back here in this place. It does feel kind of surreal to be back here and not have you all here with us, but I pray that this is all over soon and we can all be back here together. I pray that you all are well, and I send you hugs and love you all. Thank you so much. Love you.
All right, Grace.
Hello, CFC family. We definitely miss you. It's not the same. Church is empty, but this is not going to stay long. We'll be back hopefully very soon. Love you all. Miss you all. Can't wait to see you all. Can't wait to hug you all.
Yeah.
Love you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for being here. Really appreciated your presence and all of your insight. It was really great.
Thank you.
CFC family, I hope you enjoyed it again. Again, we love you more. We can't wait to see you. Please stay tuned immediately after this for some incredible worship. And until next time, we'll see you maybe Sunday morning or another time that we broadcast. Have a great rest of your night.
I searched the world, but it couldn't fill me. Man's empty praise treasures the faith I never enough. Then you came along and put me back together. And every desire is now satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better. show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all, and you still call me friend. 'Cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley, and there's not a place your mercy and grace won't find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. Sing that again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. Oh, there's nothing better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. Turn our mourning, Lord. You turn it into dancing. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn my mourning. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You're turning graves into gardens. You turn graves into gardens. You turn bones into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing, Lord, better than you, Lord. There's nothing is better than you. 'Cause mountains are still being moved, and strongholds are still being loosed. And God, we believe it. Yes, we can see that wonders are still what you do. Bodies are still being raised. My giants are still being slain. God, we believe it. Yes, we can see that wonders are still what you do. Sing with me, church. We are here for you. Come and do what you do. We are here for you. Come and do what you set our hearts on you. Come and do what you do, 'cause we need a move. We need a move. We need a move. We need a move. 'Cause miracles are happening now. Miracles happen when you move. Healing is coming in this room. Miracles happen when you move. Heaven is coming. It's here right now. Miracles happen when you move. Healing is coming in this room. Prophesize it over you are. Miracles happen when you move. Heaven is coming, and this is a move. This is a move. this is your move. This is your move.
All these pieces broken and scattered, in mercy gathered, mended and whole, empty-handed but not forsaken. I've been set free. I've been set free. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. Oh, I once was lost, but now I am found. Was blind, but now I see. Oh, I can see you now. Oh, I can see the love in your eyes, laying yourself down, raising up the broken to life. Oh, you're amazing love. You take our failure, you take our weakness, you set your treasure in jars of clay. So take this heart, Lord, I'll be your vessel, the world to see your love in me. Oh, amazing grace, how sweet the sound
to the heart of worship when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. I'm coming back to the heart of worship when it's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. I'm sorry, Lord, for the thing I've made it. When it's all about you, it's all about you, Jesus. Oh, it's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus. It's all about you. It's all about you. It's all about you, Jesus.
Thank you for worshiping with us tonight. Be blessed, church.